Hi, Matt. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me on the program.
Yeah, so I think we've had like three, four stories coming from the electricity sector in South Africa this week alone. Why are these reforms happening now?
Yes, certainly. It's all very exciting at the moment in terms of the electricity sector in South Africa. Really, what's happening is the government is facing up to the fact that the state-owned utility Eskom is struggling to reform itself and also meet demand for electricity. What we have seen is over the last couple of months, and especially the last few weeks during quite a cold winter in South Africa, is extreme power shortages. So the worst that South Africa has ever seen. Some parts of the country are enduring up to 12 hours a day without electricity. And this is really beginning to hinder economic activity and investor sentiment in the country. Just a couple of weeks ago, the rand began to lose some value, and part of the reason was because of very bad news around electricity generation in the country. What we are likely to see is the government push ahead with more liberalization of the sector. We are likely to see the government really come to terms or admit and accept the fact that the electricity sector needs wholesale reform. And so this is why this is happening at the moment.
So I guess this acknowledgement is the first step, but how soon can we expect that these reforms will begin to impact businesses?
So it's not going to be immediate. I mean, it's in terms of the reforms, a couple of things really stand out. One of the things that the government has done is it has allowed the private sector to supply an unlimited amount of electricity to the national grid. Previously, the government had limited independent power producers in the private sector to generating 100 megawatts. This obviously wasn't enough to solve the power problems. So that's one element. The other element is that there's been a huge explosion in the number of households and businesses that have solar panels on their roofs to compensate for the lack of electricity from the grid. And the government will now allow these households and businesses to sell electricity back to the grid. And that will probably have a small positive impact in the short term. But the problem with South Africa and the electricity situation there is that the shortages are so severe, and the investments required to compensate for the deficit in power at the moment are so large that it will take at least 18 months before we begin to see the first meaningful benefits as a result of increased independent power production in the country. These investments are very significant. They require planning approval as well from the government. So we're unlikely to see a significant approval for the next sort of 18 to 20 months. But we could begin to see things like municipalities procuring their own electricity independently. The city of Cape Town has said it is very keen to do so. And we're also going to see big industrial operations like the mining industry, maybe the automotive sector as well, more proactively procure power independently. So we could begin to see the effects of this within the next few months, but probably only after the next 18 to 24 months.
Yeah, 18 to 20 months. And obviously, the success or not of these reforms will have a whole lot to do with the outcome of the economic growth at the end of this year or next year.
Exactly. So one of the reasons why here at Frontier View we had downgraded our growth view for South Africa was because of severe electricity shortages. This is illustrated by the fact that the mining industry and manufacturing, although these are two very large, sophisticated industries in South Africa and should be benefiting from very high commodity prices at the moment, especially the mining industry, what we have seen is actually a contraction in activity over the first 6 months of this year. And this is almost a direct result of electricity shortages. So as soon as these industries will be able to procure their own power on a much bigger scale, then we will begin to see beneficial effects in terms of investment into these industries, but also export revenues or exports from the country, and also government revenues as a result of improved mining royalties, for example. So we could see, maybe half a percentage point improvement in growth over the next year or so if there is a very rapid turnaround in the country's electricity generating capacity. So it will be crucial. It will be very beneficial in terms of averting another recession over the next couple of years. But the thing worth noting is that if these reforms do not take effect very quickly, then the risk of South Africa seeing a stagnant or low growth or even negative growth is very pronounced, simply because the scale of the problems we're seeing with Eskom are so severe. So this is certainly good news that the reforms are taking place, but we do need to see quite aggressive timeframes when it comes to implementing these reforms.
Implementation too. Well, thank you so much, Matt Kiniga, Practice Leader, Sub-Saharan Africa with Front of You. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us this afternoon.
Great. Thanks very much.